I went to the doctor and she said, Megan, it's time. It's time to get on a drug. And I had been doing all the other things and I thought I was doing the right things. But what I realized, I had been resisting my diagnosis for 14 years. I believe in the power of acceptance, and that is the true key to healing. That's the first step to healing.
Well, Megan, I'm so excited for our conversation today. I know it's going to be a good one. I know you've been through a lot. You've had a lot of growth, and you're helping others too. So always love that. Those of us in the healing world to help others, really thrive in life and not let our diagnoses define us, right? So
Absolutely.
yeah. So Megan, let's go ahead and start off since this is your first time on the Core Connections podcast. Can you share more about you and your story and why you are here and help empower women specifically with MS? But also just know, ladies, that I know a lot of what we're going to talk about will be applicable for other things. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I'm Megan Evans. I'm the founder and creator of the MS Stage and the MS Stage method. I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis almost 20 years ago. We're coming up on 20 years in a few months. So I was 24 years old at the time, and the neurologist told me when I walked in, well, I walked into his office for my results, and he said, it's as if you've had a stroke. You'll likely end up in a wheelchair one day. And I looked at my mom and I looked at him and I said, no, I won't. And I turned around and walked out of the office and never went back. And I was 24. And I immediately went down an alternative medicine route. I immediately changed my diet. I went gluten-free. And back then at 24, 20 years ago, people were like, what? Gluten, what? Like it was not a thing. Now it's a
no.
thing. And yeah, I did a lot of research. I went down a homeopathic route and acupuncture and all the things. But really to circle back to where we are today. So it was 6 years ago. Over the years, I had some relapses and major MS exacerbations. But 6 years ago, almost 6 years, I had my worst exacerbation ever. I was numb from the neck down and literally in my hospital bed. And I was a personal wardrobe stylist at the time. I had been living in New York and LA for 14 years, but did personal wardrobe styling for over 10 years and was literally shopping on my computer with barely able to use my hands, shopping for a client on my computer in bed, in the hospital bed. My mom is there because she had flown in to be like, to help. And she's looking at me and my husband's looking at me and they're like, what the hell are you doing? Like, stop. You have to stop. And I was just running myself. I mean, I loved what I did, but I was running myself ragged and literally had to stop. And I hit rock bottom. I mean, I was numb from the neck down. And so I did. I took a year off. It took me about a couple months between physical therapy and just resting and doing the steroids and getting my body back to somewhat of normalcy. And I went to the doctor who looked at me, and a doctor that I did love her. And she said, Megan, it's time. It's time to get on a drug. Like, it's okay to do that. It's okay to need it. And I had been doing all the other things and I thought I was doing the right things. But what I realized through a lot of intense therapy of my own journey and a lot of deep meditation, that I had been resisting my diagnosis for 14 years. And when I say that, it's not to say that I didn't believe that MS is real or that, I knew that I was diagnosed with it, but I was convinced, and I'm not saying people don't reverse things, and they absolutely do, and it's absolutely possible. And I preach that anything is possible. So I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is I believe in the power of acceptance, and that is the true key to healing. That's the first step to healing, because I discovered that on my own journey. And to me, the MS is like, a thing. It's its own entity. And I had to accept that it existed in my life and learn how to become friends with it in order to work with it instead of constantly fighting it. And I feel like I was in fight or flight around it for a really long time. For all those years, I was doing all the right things. And people looked at me and they were like, "What? MS? You look amazing. And you're not on a drug. And oh my God, and whatever." But then when I hit rock bottom, it was like everything came crashing down. And I had to go, "No, this thing is real. This is a real thing in my life. And I have to start to have a relationship with it." And so I finally, not only did I accept the MS, I accepted that I would that I would get on a medication, and wasn't shamed about that. I didn't feel, at first I did, but it took me a while to go, no, I can become friends with the drug too. So like every time I take a pill or injected at the time I had an injection, every time I would give myself an injection, I would literally, and I still do that, and I teach this now, I thank it for working for me, because it's all energy. And to me, it's all about having a relationship. So whether it's a supplement, a food that you're eating, or a medicine, it's all the energetic exchange with the things you're doing. So if you appreciate them and can thank them for doing their work for you, just like I talk about talking to ourselves, right? Like always talking to our bodies and having that relationship with our bodies is so vitally important. And so really that was 6 years ago. I realized the other day, it's been almost 6 years that happened, that rock bottom happened. And that led me down a whole new path of going, yeah, I need to be sharing my story, and I need to be, out there talking to people about this, because it was really life-changing, truly. And and I was already doing a lot of body work, energy work, and I'm a very spiritual person. So all the things, but I wasn't meditating as much as I would be like, oh yeah, meditation is good. I wasn't actually doing it. And now it's a huge part of my practice. So, and I find it incredibly impactful and important for women I work with as well.
Oh my gosh, you said so many amazing things that I cannot wait to unpack here. I'm like, where do we start? Okay, I feel like we need to start kind of at this acceptance was the word that you used. And
Yeah.
I thought that was very interesting because there's two ways I feel like of looking at this, right? Like I loved how you also mentioned like, if we have that belief that we can reverse something, is it possible? Absolutely. But there's also the piece of acceptance and learning to work with your body instead of working against your body. I cannot tell you, I feel like I'm like, oh my gosh, Megan, I feel like I'm listening to myself. I say
Oh,
all the time that preaching all the time to my clients and in my programs, it's like we have to learn to work with our body. The more that we try to force it and fight it to do what we want, not only like you mentioned, are we living in fight or flight, which is obviously not good for so many reasons, but we're likely not making the progress that we want. So I'd love you to go deeper and talk about that. Was there some like, what do you coach with your clients and students today, or what was it that helped you to make that transition of, whether it's that acceptance, whether it's, learning to work with your body?
yeah. So I had been working with the medical intuitive for years, even before that episode happened. And she's one of my mentors that I work with today. But so I had been doing that work all along, but the acceptance part was still not there. It was like I was connecting with my body on a deeper level, but I still didn't realize that I had fully resisted the diagnosis. And it wasn't until I fully accepted the diagnosis and went, oh yeah, this is a part of my life. This exists. And I need to be at peace with this. I need to live in peace with it, because you can fight it all day long, and all it's going to do is make your life worse. Like it's going to be fight or flight for you. And that's what happened to me. And that's what happens with a lot of my students. They come to me because they realize they are in denial around their diagnosis. They are angry at their bodies or their diagnosis, or they're grieving what their old body, quote unquote, used to be versus what it is now. And so that's such a huge part of my practice, is the emotional component of connecting with the emotions and learning to switch them. And so I'll tell you, like, what happened with me is my drama dance background, which I grew up dancing and acting. And when I hit that rock bottom, it was like I was craving getting back to the theater. And it was like my body knew, for whatever reason, that I needed to get back to where I felt the most free and the most myself from back when I was young. And at that time, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do that. I mean, I haven't been in the theater world in a really long time. I'm a stylist. Like, what is that? How's that going to work? And so I really started practicing some things at home. And I like pulled out all my old theater books that I'd been keeping for all these years. And I started looking through different improv practices I used to do years ago back in college. And I started kind of piecemealing some practices together for myself to touch in with emotions through my body, through movement. And through that, I created a practice, an exercise called Switch, which is all about switching the emotions from like anger to love, or frustration to ease. Like, we switch the emotions during one song in a very short, like every 20 to 30 seconds, because I want your body to feel, and this is what I experienced, and resistance to acceptance is one of the ones we do too. It's like to feel what the body felt like in the resistance versus what it can feel like to accept. And once you start to practice that with the emotions, and your cells begin to go, oh, that feels good. Like, it can switch, from the negative to the positive. Your body can go, oh, well, I want to go there. Like, that feels better for me. And so it's really a profound practice. And that's just one piece of what we do at the MS stage. But that's what I started doing. And through that and therapy and meditation and really getting back to being present, that's how I was able to begin to go on my acceptance journey. And that's when I realized that's the true key to real healing. Like, that's the first step. And yeah, there's so many steps, but that is the number one thing in my world, that you have to start there. You have to start there, because through the acceptance, you can learn how to have compassion for your body. You can be in gratitude with your body. You can talk to your cells. You can start to have language with your body, your symptoms. I mean, I have a meditation practice that leads my students through a meditation where they name their symptoms. So my left leg's name is Roxy. My foot's name is Grace. So you can start having these relationships with these characters in your play and learn who they are, what they look like, what they're wearing. And it's a very deep practice of learning more about them, so that it doesn't become so like every time they show up, you're like mad at them, right? And why? Instead, you can say, why are you showing up today? What's going on? You can start to really have conversation with them, which is super important. And people don't realize that.
No, I love that. Yes, talking to your body. I say it all the time too. It's we get so stuck up here in our head all the time. It's like everything is in our head. And like you were saying, it's when we really start to tune into what our body, why is our body doing whatever it is doing, usually there's a reason it's coming up. And it's whether, being more present, slowing down, meditating, or whatever it is. And it's so interesting to me because I have so many conversations with people, around health and getting, healing your body and all the things. And like the commonality is the slowing down piece, this becoming more present. And it always, like, I get super excited about it. And it seems like everyone I have conversations with, my own experience too, it's like we have to almost hit that rock bottom. Like, why is this the case? I'm not sure. But it's like, it's like that's when we have these big transformations and we learn so much about ourselves and our body, because prior to that, we are kind of trying to ignore it, not acknowledge it. And, and kind of back to the whole thing of, and I want to just reframe it this a little bit, in a sense of, when you're saying the diagnosis and like coming to terms with that, recognizing that, but also not allowing it to define who you are. And I think
Oh,
there's a
totally.
big difference. And I want you to talk
Absolutely.
about that because
Yeah.
and the only reason I just want to bring clarity around that is because I say a lot that a diagnosis is it's just symptoms of what's going on in your
Yeah.
body, right? So when we
It's
look
just
at it from a
it's
symptom
just a
perspective
label. It's just a
and your body
label.
communicating. So I just wanted to clarify that for people listening.
Yeah.
And if you have more you want to say about like the difference of that acceptance versus like
Yes.
actually like letting it define you
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it absolutely doesn't. Do you know what I'm saying? Where I'm going with that?
I'm glad you brought that up because I don't say I have it. And I find it very important not to say that you have whatever you've been, quote, diagnosed with, right? It's just a label. And you don't want to own the label. I don't own the label. Like, am I part of the MS community on Instagram? Yes, of course, because I want to serve other women who've been diagnosed with MS. But I mean, that doesn't mean that I'm going to own the label and go walk around going, yes, I have this. And I do say I was diagnosed with it 20 years ago. But the more you say, right, your cells are listening to everything you say, you think, you feel, you do, literally. And so the more you say that, then your cells are beginning to have the identity around it. And you don't want that to happen because then they will become sick with that thing. So you want to accept it, understand it so that you can have a conversation with it and a relationship with it. But it is the MS to me. It's not mine. I don't have it. I'm not it, right? I am not it. So yeah, I think it's vitally important and it's what I teach. It's super, super, super important. So I'm glad. Thank you for reminding me of that. I mean,
Yeah.
to bring that question up into the space because it's very important.
Yeah, it is. No, I knew where your head was on that. I just wanted
Yeah.
you to clarify
Thank you.
for women listening because
Yes.
they're two different things. Okay,
Yeah.
you talked about, I feel like I'm gonna get questions on this, that our cells are listening.
Mhm.
And can you talk about that a little bit more? Because it's fascinating to me and I know a lot about it, but from a healing perspective, becoming more in tune with your body, like what's up with the cellular function? And it's so fascinating. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
take
it's
it away on
science,
that, Megan. It's
right? It's science. So it's proven, right? Like and this is the other thing I do with the emotions in our work, like scientists have shown that like if they put well, I don't know, a cell, whatever it is, on a microscope, right? And you're sending joy energy to that, it'll start to create a new cellular like molecule that looks perfect, right? If you're sending it anger or hate, it changes completely. So there's science around that, and I'm not a scientist, but I do I'm very intrigued by the whole thing, and I find it so fascinating, and I do read a lot on it. And Dr. Joe Dispenza's work is incredibly powerful. If for those of you who don't know his work, check it out. Um, but yeah, and so in my work, the emotions around that's what I'm talking about. Like, if our cells begin to experience the new emotions and understand, oh, well, that's possible, then they'll shift. They can begin to shift. And visualizing your cells changing or beginning to visualize a new experience. So, a lot of times in my meditations, I visualize myself walking perfectly or walking up and down stairs 1,000 times or swimming in the ocean the way I used to, or like doing certain movements that right in this particular moment I may not be able to do perfectly, but in my visualizations I do them perfectly. And I can tell you from my experience, I've had moments where whatever I visualized in my meditations for a few months actually comes true. And I'm like, oh my gosh, did I really just do that? That's incredible. And it's totally possible. And your cells are paying attention to all of that. And so a lot of times I also like to visualize my cells dancing and smiling because they're like, tiny and you have trillions of them. So I love to visualize and meditate on them, like swimming in my body and as like smiley faces throughout my body, because it's just very calming. And yeah, you can just continually have a relationship with your body in that way.
Yeah, the visualization practice it is absolutely key to healing your
Mhm.
body, getting out of dysfunction, whatever it is. I'm always coaching people to like visualize this, visualize that, even if your body isn't doing what you want it to. This is something that comes up a lot. So I would love for you to speak a little more on this because this is like a classic thing that I teach is, I teach women a lot how to more effectively strengthen their pelvic floor and their deep core so we can get out of pain and dysfunction and move better and all of that. And in the very beginning, because they're learning something that's completely new and different, again, this can go for anything new you're learning, is that we have to recognize we have those old patterns of our body that are just easily going to take over for us all the time. And we need to get into this space of starting to visualize what we do want, which is hard a lot of times because you're entering this space of like trying to tell your body certain things that, okay, I'm starting, like cue your body what you want or visualize yourself doing the movement you want. But in that moment, I find that a lot of women can kind of fight themselves on it
Mhm.
because they're like, but that's not my reality right now. And the logical ego brain goes, but that's not my reality. And a lot of times I'll even hear people say, well, that may not be possible for me, or I don't believe that's possible for me. Can you go a little deeper with all that? Well,
Yeah,
how
I
do
mean,
you
I
help
think
in that visual perspective of shifting out of when we get all those thoughts coming in and that like, oh, well, I don't know if I can ever do this or not believing that they can.
yeah. So my biggest tip, my first tip is to say to yourself, close your eyes, take a deep breath, say to yourself, I, Megan, get out of my head and into my body and just drop in. Takes 10 seconds. And obviously you would say your own name. But once you do that and you keep your eyes closed, you can begin to feel like you're in the present moment. So let those fears go away, let them float away, and just be present. And then you can begin to visualize newness. Then you can begin to see what's possible. And you can talk to your body. What is possible? Where would you want to see yourself? Where do you want to go? And start to have that conversation. I know that people's heads and anxiety and fears really get in the way.
Yeah.
And so the more we can get into our bodies, whether it's through movement, which is one of the things I teach, through visualization, through just dropping in and saying, I get out of my head and into my body. There are simple practices that can get us there to get us out of our head. And I feel like that's the biggest trick, right? And it can trip you up, and it might trip you up like 35 times a day or more, 100 times a day. But the more you can remind yourself to get back to that moment, to get back to that and let those things go, take a deep breath, get out of your head and into your body, the more you can focus on like the present moment, but also visualizing the future of what you want to create, because your thoughts create your reality too.
Yeah,
And that's science.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Joe Dispenza's work is amazing. I got to see him speak in person last year, and the work that he does, it's so incredible. So if anyone's listening that is
Yeah.
questioning this whole conversation, essentially,
Yeah.
go look
Check
at
him
his
out.
work and
Yeah.
read all the testimonials of the people that couldn't walk and could walk after and just like had cancer and then the cancer's gone, and it is like it will blow your mind, the stuff that's out
Yeah.
there.
It's
And
the
it can be
power of the
really,
mind. It's
yeah.
unbelievable. Yeah.
And the body
And
because
the
it's the
body,
cells, right? It's
both.
the cells.
But it's like
It's
the mind body connection, right? So like what a
yeah.
lot of people are disconnected from their bodies, and whether they're in fight or flight or they've had trauma in their lives and so they've disconnected from their bodies, or so it's really important to do that simple 10-second practice. Even if you can do it every morning, get out of your head and into your body. If nothing else, if that's the one thing you say to yourself every morning, besides, gratitude is important too, but if you do nothing else, I would suggest that, because you can start your day in a whole new way by doing that, by dropping into your body.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it can reset your nervous system. And again,
Yeah.
we get it's like the slightest little thing sometimes in the morning could kind of be like, oh, it ruined my whole day. And it doesn't have to, because we have the power to shift every single situation that happens, just like we have the power to work with our symptoms. So
Mm-hmm.
I know you talk a lot about like our symptoms as our superpower. I love
Mm-hmm.
talking about things as our superpowers. I'm like, Megan, I think you and I were destined to be good friends. I'm like, she's speaking my
Yes.
language over here. Always talking about
Yeah.
our superpowers. So how can we do that? Like when people are like, I'm in pain or I have this going on, how is that a superpower for our body, Megan?
Yeah. So, well, the conversation, you have to have the conversation with whatever the symptom is. So I start by doing the practice of the meditation of naming the symptom. And once you do that and you learn more about it, so what it looks like, what it's wearing, where it came from, how old is he or she or it could be an object, that you have in your, that comes up. So learn more about it and then have a conversation with it. Like, why are you showing up? Why are you showing up? And they might say, usually they're giving you a message that's such a gift that you're like, oh my God, I've not been, they're telling you to slow down, right? Or they're telling you to ease up on yourself, or to not be so stressed out, or to, yeah, like I'm trying to think of what other things people have said. So many students, I have so many students come up with the most incredible names for their symptoms, and it's like the first name that comes into their head. But yeah, there's so many reasons why they could be showing up. And then once you realize that they're just messenger, they're just there to give you a message. So once you realize that they're just there to give you a message to slow down, then you're like, oh, then you can actually allow them to become your superpower, because you actually need to slow down, or you need to ease up on yourself and not be so stressed out. I mean, they really are there. They're like knocking at your door, being like, please pay attention to me. And the worse they get, they're like, no, please pay attention. No. Like, really, you need to pay attention. I mean, if they start getting worse and worse and worse, then it's like, stop ignoring them.
Yeah.
Have compassion for them and begin to have that conversation. And the more you do that, you're turning them into your superpower, because you're realizing that they are actually a gift to tell you what you need to do. And so you can have some very intimate conversations with them. I mean, a lot of my students, I'll lead them. In fact, a student last week, she had a symptom show back up, and I was like, okay, well, let's work through this. Like, what's going on? And then her symptom gave her a lot of new information. Well, you've been back at it too hard again, and you need to do this. And I don't like this food, and I like that food. And I mean, she got so much information from just having the conversation that's vitally important. And then she can go on and be like, okay, cool, I got all that information. Well, then now that is my superpower. I'm going to go do those things that my symptom just told me to do.
Yeah, it's looking at them as the messenger. And I think we need
Yeah.
to do so much more of that. And we all have so much power within ourselves. I'm just saying, on a previous conversation, we're talking about something different, but it kind of comes back to that we have so much healing potential within ourselves. We have to tap into it. We have to kind of get out of our own way, be
Yeah.
open-minded. I think that's a really big thing. What a lot of what you're talking about might sound a little out there for some women listening, but
Totally.
it's when we get out of our comfort zone and
Yeah.
start to allow and be open and say, hey, what's the worst that's going to happen if you start to visualize your body working the way you want it to, or visualizing your life the way you like? What's the worst that's going to happen? The
Yeah.
worst is nothing changes. The best is you start to actually feel and see a shift. And
Yeah.
again, this is the whole thing of like, we sometimes have to get that logical brain out of the way, because it lives in our past. So much of like,
Yeah.
we're conditioned to live in our past. And so you said so much, like, it's about being present, which I, again, cannot agree with more. But then it's like, okay, if we're living in the present and we're not loving what's going on in the present, we have the power to start to shift it. And so
Yeah.
I just want to encourage everyone to be open-minded. So much, Megan, of what you're talking about today is so much of things that I've done for my healing journey as well. If you can't see it, even I guess here's one thing I'm thinking I want to add, and feel free to chime into this too, is because again, sometimes I'll hear from women is they're like, I can't see it. Like, because maybe they've been struggling for so long. They're like, I
Yeah.
can't even see what I want for my life,
Mhm.
right? So then it's like, well, baby step it. You know,
Yeah.
what do you
That's what
want
I,
for
yeah.
the rest of your day today? What do you want
Yeah.
for tomorrow? Maybe we can't look 5 years from now. Maybe
Yeah.
it's super small baby steps. It's like that's like learning any skill. Like just start really, really, really small. Even if it's as simple as like, I don't know, how your movement practice is going to go today, or your sleep, or you just talking more kindly to your
Yeah.
body can be a really good step in
Yeah.
the right direction.
Yeah. I would say visualize yourself doing something that excites you. Even if you can't maybe see, I don't know, you having a baby because you've been having a hard time having a baby. I don't know. That came to me. That's an example, right? So even if you can't visualize that because it's painful to visualize that and you've really been struggling with it. So maybe it's you visualize yourself on a vacation with your husband and it's magical and it's lovely and you're in the ocean and so visualize yourself doing something that brings you joy in the visualization. Don't like knuckle it hard, like white knuckle it to try to visualize
Yeah.
something that you're like, but I can't, that just doesn't feel right to me. Don't do that. Just visualize things that do feel good in your body. And I feel like slowly but surely you could get to that place of visualizing that thing that you really want. But maybe, yeah, like you said, maybe you have to baby step it.
Yeah, absolutely. So well said. Okay, so Megan, I know you talk about your signature warm-up exercise that women can do daily to help them get in touch with their body and their feelings and symptoms and whatever is going on with them. So can you share more about that with us?
Yeah, so it's called Switch, and you can literally put on a song first thing in the morning. So after you get out of bed, and maybe you've done the I get out of my head and into my body. As you get out of bed, put a song on that's impact. It could be you might wake up sad, you might wake up frustrated. So however you feel, try to put a song on that's kind of in the vein of how you're feeling. And then every 20 to 30 seconds, switch that feeling. So if you wake up sad, switch the feeling of the movement from sadness to joy and slowly begin to, and it might just be that you want to switch sadness and that's it. You may not want to switch a bunch of different emotions, but it could be resistance to acceptance, sadness to joy, frustration to ease, anger to love. So there's all kinds of different ways to move with a song, switching different emotions. And it's not choreographed movement. I want you to feel what your body feels like in that emotion and just move through it and move with it and see what comes up for you. And there might be days where you're like, oh, I don't feel any of the negative emotions. I just want to feel empowered and I want to dance, I want to move all the positive things. I want to move compassion and gratitude and joy and love and freedom and how good does that feel in my body? But then certain days I'm like, no, I don't feel great today. I want to wake up. I'm going to move, frustration today or whatever. But make sure to switch it because you don't want to finish the song and not have your body switch to something positive at the end of the song. Because it's really important, like I said, for your body and your symptoms. And it might just be that a lot of women and some people are in wheelchairs or have very limited mobility. And so they do the movement practice with just their eyes closed, visualizing themselves moving with the motions. And some do it just seated, moving their upper body. And that's whatever works for you. It doesn't have to be some big, huge movement or some perfect choreographed dance. It's just moving with your body.
I love that. So then do you recommend after going through that they put on music that helps them to feel the way they want to feel?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can do it either way. You can do I want to make sure you switch from negative to positive. So it can be a very upbeat, empowering song that you still move the two emotions through. Um, or you can turn on a song that makes you feel frustrated and try to switch through that. or do two songs, however people feel. And in my practice, we only use one song. And by the end of the 12 weeks, we only use the empowering songs, because by once they get through 6 to 7-ish weeks, they've totally changed already. And so a lot of those negative emotions, they're not even there in their mindset, because it's all about the mindset shift. So
Yeah.
once they get towards the end, towards week 8, we're just doing like the fun songs that make them feel uplifted and focusing on joy and gratitude and compassion and all the positive emotions that make our bodies feel so good. But you've got to get through the crap, right? And work
Yeah.
through that in order to get to the other side. And so, yeah, it's all about the mindset shift.
Yeah. I'm glad that you're acknowledging and talking a lot about this. We have to acknowledge the crappy stuff because I
Yeah.
do feel like so many women want to just shove it down and think it doesn't
Yep.
exist. And yeah, I teach some breathing practices that are around like, hey, we got to feel it in our body. We got to recognize it's coming up, but we can move it out and we can shift
Totally.
it and do the
Yeah.
things. So I love this. I love this idea of doing it with a song first thing in the morning. So ladies, give it a try. I can't wait to I know some
Start
of you will
moving your
definitely do
bodies.
it. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's amazing. Start your day off even better. I assume you could do it anytime during the day too, right? Something happens, you're just
Totally.
feeling
Totally.
frustrated. Music is so empowering. I think
It
it's,
is.
what we listen to. And so it's good. So music is powerful, helping to move the stuff out of the body, the junk out of the body, as I talk about it sometimes.
It's really important. Music is a key to my program. I just launched my meditation album, which is all about, has empowering music behind the meditations, because I'm a huge believer in the music actually can drive the visualizations deeper into your cells. That's what I believe. I truly believe that. So the music can actually help drive the healing. And I find it to be incredibly important, and I've seen it happen. And so it's a huge part of my program for sure.
Yeah, the meditation music. Do you do any music with like a decent bass with it where you can like really
Mhm.
feel it in your body? Because the
Yeah.
bass, that is something, ladies, that like if you just want to even put on some music that has like a really strong bass and like lay down by the
Yeah.
speaker, sounds a little
Yeah.
crazy, but it can feel amazing. Absolutely. I mean, I've experienced that. You're shaking
I
your head. You're
love
like,
that.
yes, I know
Well,
this.
yeah, because
It's
also it's like resetting your vagus nerve too, right?
Mhm.
It's like
Yeah.
resetting and it's like getting into your root chakra. So it's getting down to the literally your base, right?
Mhm.
Like the root chakra. I love that. Yeah, so one of the meditations, well, three of them, I collaborated with a guy who's a composer, not for all of them, but for three of the songs, he gave me three of his tracks. And one of them is very bass driven. And I remember when we went into the studio, the guy at the studio was like, wow, he's really good at bass. And I was like, yes, this is what this meditation needed. This is what this needed, is like strong bass behind it. So yeah, it's very cool. I think it's so important. I find it really, really important.
Yeah, love the music component, love the bass in the music. So, Megan, I love this conversation. I think it can be so empowering
Thank you.
for all of us, no matter really where you
Yeah.
are in life. Even if you're not struggling with anything, this can just help
Yeah.
enhance your life and help you to feel even better. Even if you feel amazing, like, hey, well, we can feel even
Yeah.
better, right? Help with those
Totally.
little moments
Totally.
of
And
life where,
this can apply to anything from anxiety to stress to any chronic illness to cancer. I mean, it doesn't have to be MS. It just happens to be where I've been for 20 years in that space. And that's who I'm working with now. But I do believe at some point I will open it up to more people or women with chronic illness, different chronic, whatever they are, it won't matter.
yeah.
I've had a lot of my students actually say this doesn't have to just be for women with MS, because they're finding such a powerful impact that it can really work for anyone. So yeah, so it doesn't have to be for just MSers.
Yeah, I love it. Such good stuff, Megan. Will you
Thank
share
you.
with everyone where they can find out more about you? And I know if you want to share a little bit about your 12-week program that you're doing, which sounds amazing.
Yeah, thank you. So the best way I can support women with MS is in my signature 12-week program. You get such a transformation. It's incredible what happens over those 12 weeks. And with an intimate group of women, women have called it life-changing. It's been really, really impactful in women's lives. So really the best thing to do is go to my website, themsstage.com. It'll be everything will be in the show notes. So I don't have to go on and on about that, but you can also just book a discovery call with me to learn more. But I've got a mini course, I've got a meditation album, I've got a 3-day meditation journey, which does help you turn your fears to dust and turn your symptoms into your superpowers. And that's not just for women with MS, that's for anybody. Same with the mini course and same with my meditation album, which just launched. So there's lots of stuff. There's lots of ways to get in touch with me and get part of the work.
Well, Megan, thank you so much for the work that you're doing to help
Thank
to
you.
empower and change other women's lives as well. So we all work together to share this information, ladies, with others. It doesn't, again, have to be just for those with MS, but just good conversation of how to enhance the quality of our life. And especially if you are struggling with something, I feel like everything we talked about today just can really help to shift and help you feel even
Yes.
better. So thank you so
Yeah.
much, Megan.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.